Hey everybody, this video is going to go over the PowerPoint from the Week 5 module on analyzing visual argument. So we've already taken a look at the PowerPoint just titled Analyzing Argument, and we learned a lot of useful information in there, and we even touched on visual argument a little bit in that PowerPoint, but I wanted to take some more time to talk about visual argument in more detail. Not only is it a little more interesting and sometimes easier to figure out than a written argument, sometimes not as easy to figure out as a written argument. And I wanted to spend more time on it because the final exam essay that you'll be doing will be a rhetorical analysis of a visual argument. You'll get to choose from a selection of the visuals that we've looked at in the weekly discussions throughout the quarter. You'll get to choose one of those and write a rhetorical analysis essay. So I want to make sure that we spend a little bit of time focusing on analyzing just visual argument for a little bit. All right. And visuals make arguments as well. Film, photos, songs, art of all genres, they all make arguments. They make claims and appeals. They use examples. They employ evidence. They sometimes even engage the opposition. And they can even, and they often do, tap into our cultural assumptions and values. We are often more attracted to visuals than we are to reading a bunch of words. A lot of reasons for that, but what's important is that the visuals appeal to us, and because of that, artists and advertisers and even politicians, they can use that to their advantage, and they can present us with all different kinds of arguments in the visual, and we may not even realize it right away. So that's why it's so important to take some time to figure out how visual argument works, both just as it does in written argument and how it is different than written argument. So on slide 3, I start off with the title for the slide is a question, visual argument. And the idea is to get you to look at that image that's on slide 3 and decide, is it presenting some sort of argument to us? And the picture is actually a very famous one, a very historically important painting. It's called George Washington Crossing the Delaware. And a lot of the details in this painting make very clear points about Washington and about America as a whole. If you consider how his posture on the ship and where he's placed on the ship, his posture, his height, the lighting, because it's dark in some places, but not where the focus is, which is where Washington is placed in the painting. The colors that are used, there's a lot of red, white, and blue. And the position of his boat compared to all the other ships, which you can't even really see. That's how prominent his boat is placed in the painting. But all of these details, they add up to make a claim. Now, there might not be a direct line of reasoning like we have seen with written argument, but they still all accumulate. All of those elements of the painting, they come together to lead us to a conclusion about General George Washington. All right, the next slide, same thing. We have 2 pictures of former President Obama. Both of these were taken by professional photographers, and they were selected for the White House gallery. So in other words, the elements of each picture are not accidental. How the composition of each one, the angle, the overall tone of each picture were considered in every detail. And that's why they were chosen to be a part of the White House gallery. And they add up to different claims about the president's character. So you can see in the top photo, he's in the Oval Office. He's by the window, by the flag. His head is down. There's something very quiet and still and serene about the photo. You might even say that there's like a very serious or somber tone to it, but it definitely conveys an idea about who he is and how he takes on the job. And then in the bottom photo, a little more lively, we've got other people in it. It's a little brighter, and it's all military people. So also, and he's giving a fist bump to one of them, right? So definitely that bottom image tells us something about his character as well. You could go into how it's, showing him surrounding himself with people from the military. So kind of a play on patriotism and his duty to protect us, just like their duty to protect us. The fist bump would go to how he's, friendly with the military, how he has a good rapport with them, also how it makes them a little younger and hipper, that sort of thing. So both images in record time, it's not like we have to study either image very long to get that input, but both are making clear claims about Barack Obama, right? I don't want you to think, though, that every single visual that you come across is presenting an argument. Sometimes a picture is just a picture. And you'll see there on slide 5, we have 2 images of the Grand Canyon, and the image on top is just an image. There's nothing going with it. And it's just a picture. I mean, maybe we could start making some guesses as to what kind of claim might be being made in that top picture. But without some sort of context or language or anything else, we can't really know for sure. There's nothing really to point us in a particular direction. It's not focused. It's not a readily apparent argument. However, in the image underneath, we take the same area, still the Grand Canyon, and this time we put 3 words across the top. God bless America. And now the image is making a claim. Now the image is saying something. It's making an argument. So there is that line between, is this really making an argument, or is it just a picture? Can't I just look at it? And hopefully, as you learn more about argument, and especially visual argument, you'll be able to tell, like, no, I really think it's just a picture. When we take pictures on vacation, we're not taking pictures to present an argument. We're just taking pictures because it's pretty, or because we want to remember that moment or that place or whatever the case may be. But just keep in mind that you could turn them into arguments if you decided to go there with them. And so in this case, the one on top, not really so much an argument, but the one on bottom, they went there, they took it there, and they are presenting a claim, right? The one area of life, though, where you can pretty much guarantee that any image involved is presenting some sort of argument or some sort of claim is in advertising. The images and words are meticulously crafted. They are so purposefully chosen to form some very intense arguments. The line of reasoning is usually pretty simple. They're usually trying to get us to buy something, right? Or buy into something. But it's the support strategies that can be pretty subtle and complex. Sometimes the support, because if they're trying to get us to buy the product, how are they going to convince us? How are they going to persuade us? Well, sometimes the support is all about the product or the thing they're trying to get us to buy into. They talk about its attributes. Sometimes they're appealing to values. And sometimes the support goes even beyond the product and argues something about us as consumers. So advertising is just so chock full of visual argument. It's crazy. And in the second half of the 20th century, advertisers realized that it was more effective to present an argument to try to get people to buy stuff by appealing to their values, their fears, their hopes, far more powerful than supporting the claim with facts about the product. So I have on slide 7, it says compare these two passages. So we have our super round tires are very strong with steel belted reinforcements. They have complex and tested traction patterns for maximum stopping power. Make sure you consider super rounds. Compare that to this one. Your family puts their trust in you. When you drive, their well-being, their collective future is entirely in your hands. Your driving ability depends on the quality of your tires. Make sure you consider super rounds the best choice for your family's future. Well, it seems over the top. It seems pretty obvious that they're appealing to our, our values and needs here in a very obvious way. But as it turns out, the second version is much more effective. And, millions of perfectly intelligent and reasonable people respond immediately to advertising campaigns that appeal to values, character, need, and emotion. So once they realized that we respond more to those types of supporting examples, it was all over. Then advertising pounced on it, and that's how a good bit of advertising works these days. You will still get some facts about the product. You might even get some, ethos worked in there, like with celebrity endorsements or something like that. But for the most part, advertising works by using pathos, emotion, right? So if you want some more examples, there's an essay, not really an essay, it's a little excerpt on page 99 of the textbook regarding the GMC truck ad. And then there's also, which we mentioned in the first PowerPoint on analyzing argument, the Hearts of Argument, Benetton's advertising appeal. It's on pages 100 to 101. So you'll see the image that's being analyzed, and then you can read the essay. But I want to focus more on some additional visuals that aren't in the textbook for this PowerPoint. So starting with slide 8, we have a series of posters or advertisements, and we're going to take a quick look at each one to just get a feel for how persuasive advertising can be and how subtle it can sometimes be. So our first example here is the famous Rosie the Riveter poster from World War II. She's got her bicep up, she's flexing her muscles, and she's saying, "We can do it." So what do we know, though, first, if anything, about the role of women during World War II? Because that's going to help a little bit in figuring out what's going on with this poster. So World War II, all of the men in America were off fighting the war, and that put a huge strain on the economy here back at home. And they needed people to come into the workforce, not only just to keep the economy running, as usual, but more importantly, to take part in the part of the economy that was helping the war. So building the parts and supplies and things like that. So sure, they still had some men left here at home to help out in those jobs, but not enough. So who was left? The women. So for the first time in American history, there was a call for women to leave the home and enter the workforce. So that's pretty crazy, first of all. And just think about how crazy it was. Think about if you were a man during this time and considering the idea of women leaving the home and entering the workforce. Probably not a lot of fans of this idea to begin with. And you might think that the women were all about it, that the women were like, heck yeah, let's do this. But you'd be surprised. If you have grown up with everyone in your society, and your culture telling you that your place is in the home and that there are certain elements that make a woman, that make her attractive and desirable and how she's supposed to be. And then all of a sudden you're being asked to do something completely opposite of that. Not all women were necessarily on board to begin with. So, having kind of thought about those things, let's take another look at the picture, right? So, look at her pose, right? She's flexing. Look at her face. She's very serious. Her clothing looks like she's in like coveralls, right? Like she's ready to do some pretty heavy duty work. She's got her hair in the handkerchief, right? And then we have the words up above. We can do it. So who is speaking? Who's saying those words? She is. The speech bubble's coming from her. So Rosie herself is saying, we can do it. So who is the audience? Who is she saying this to? Well, based on what I just said about this new era for women, this new thing, perhaps she's speaking to all the men out there, and she's saying, we can do it. Have faith in us. We got this. Maybe she's speaking to the women out there too. The women who are like, I can't do that. I can't do a man's job, right? Are they crazy? She's reassuring them as well. No, we can do it, right? What's interesting though is to look a little closer at her appearance, because you can easily get distracted by the coveralls and the hair up, the flexed muscle there. Like she is strong, she is ready to work, and she has confidence in herself, and we should have confidence in her and all the other women as well. And I think that's valid, but there's a little more to it. Look at her face, right? I mentioned that she has a serious expression, but there's a lot more to notice about her face, and her hair for that matter. So, I mentioned that she has the handkerchief holding her hair up, but what little hair is still visible under the front of the handkerchief, you can tell it's still styled, right? She has still styled her hair for the day, and you can see a little glimpse of that peeking out. Her face. Yes, she has a serious expression, but look at how soft and beautiful her skin is, how perfect her eyes are. It looks like she may even have some makeup on. So despite how strong her pose is, her face is still telling us she's very soft and feminine and beautiful. Now, why would they have her look like that if what they're trying to do is convince everyone out there that these women are strong enough to come do a man's job? Well, it goes back to those fears. If the men are afraid of letting the women enter the workforce and do this kind of work, maybe they're afraid because they're like, what's going to happen to these women? We like them how they are. If they go do a man's job, they're going to get all these hard muscles, and they're going to get dirty, and they're not going to be feminine anymore. And she's saying, yeah, I am. It's all right. It's still me. I still got this. Don't worry about that. Same thing for the women. If the women are like, I'm a woman, and I identify myself as a woman because I'm feminine, because I'm soft, because I'm beautiful. And if I go do this work, if I, go do a man's job, you know, what if I'm not soft and feminine anymore? What if I lose that? Then who am I? And again, she's reassuring them with that face, no, you can do this job, help your country and still retain that essence of what it means to be a woman. So it is an extremely effective and complex argument that's being made in this very simple image, but there's so much to it. It's so cool. You're going to see another version of Rosie for this week's homework, and that version of Rosie comes a little later in the war when the war is still going on, but we're reaching the conclusion of it. And so Rosie looks a little different, and that poster isn't quite the same as this one. So I'm interested if you choose to look at that one for the homework, what you have to say about it. All right, so let's move on though. Our next ad is so funny. Comes from the 1920s, and we've got these two women, both in bathing suits, which are very the opposite of what we would. Although some of these are coming back in style, but they're not nearly as revealing as a lot of swimsuits are. But so above them we have, how do you look in your bathing suit, with a question mark, not after the word suit, but down a little bit in between the two women. And then underneath the one woman we have like this, and underneath the other, or this. And then we have this man down at the bottom, this very serious, older looking gentleman with the glasses, and he's saying, skinny? Thousands gain 10 to 25 pounds this new easy way. New ionized yeast adds pounds, gives thousands natural sex appealing curves. So interesting, right? So they are trying to sell ionized yeast because it will help you gain weight, at least 10 to 25 pounds, so that you will look better in your bathing suit. And notice those two women, how do you look in your bathing suit? Like this. So the woman on the left, the skinnier one, the thinner one, she's not real happy. That facial expression, she's not feeling it. Or like this. And then the girl on the right, who has a few more pounds to her, she is all smiles and she is happy as can be. And it's a very interesting juxtaposition between the two of them. One is clearly happy with how she looks in her bathing suit. The other one clearly unhappy with how she looks. And this man is offering that second woman the perfect solution to her problem. If you want to look better in your bathing suit, try the new ionized yeast. You'll gain 10 to 25 pounds and get those sex appealing curves, and then you'll be just as happy as the other woman in the photo. I think it's pretty obvious how the argument gets presented here. I threw it in with this PowerPoint though, because I just thought it was hysterical how different advertising, or what advertising tries to sell us these days, right? Our next example comes from the 1980s, and it is an ad for a disposable razor from Gillette, and it's called Just Whistle. There's some text underneath. It's kind of hard to read. I know part of it says if you want to get someone's attention, just whistle. Just Whistle is the first razor uniquely designed for a woman by Gillette. It gently hugs the contours of your body, blah, blah, blah. So they're selling this disposable razor. They're calling it Just Whistle, so that, because you whistle to get someone's attention. So to get someone's attention, you need to use this product and shave your legs. Notice her pose, lounge there on the towel, her body language, somewhat seductive. The shadow above her, I suppose, was supposed to be a good thing when the ad was created. It creeps me out personally. that stature of that man, like how imposing he is, and it's just a shadow standing above her. So he's in that position of power and authority over her, almost like um, she's at his mercy in a way. Um, and of course, the person speaking, or the voice coming from the text, just whistle if you want to get someone's attention. Just whistle. It doesn't appear to be a woman who is conveying that information, but clearly the audience is women. So I think obviously the argument that's being presented here is if you use this product to shave your legs, you will be sexy and seductive like this woman, and you will get the attention of this man who is towering over her. That's a pretty typical ad, honestly, even though it gives me the creeps. That's what advertising does. That's pretty standard. They're definitely presenting an argument to us. The next poster, it comes from a United Nations ad campaign from 2013. So we have this woman centered in the frame, and across her mouth, instead of seeing her mouth, we see a Google search bar. And you can see that someone has started typing in some words to search. And it's the two words that we got so far are women should. Now, underneath the search bar, we have that drop down menu of predictive text based on your search history, based on trends and what's popular in that moment. When you go to search something, Google will try to predict what the full phrase is that you're trying to search, and it will offer you those options in that drop down menu. And then if you find it, if you see it, you don't have to finish typing out the whole thing. You can just take your mouse and click on the option that fits. So in this case, the drop down menu after women should, we have women should stay at home, women should be slaves, women should be in the kitchen, women should not speak in church, right? And then underneath the search bar, it says, very small print here, women should have the right to make their own decisions. So I think it's pretty powerful. Looking at her pose, her facial expression, her eyes, the placement of the Google search bar over her mouth. Obviously that's not an accident, right? Consider who is speaking, who's telling us that women, should have the right to make their own decisions. I think the argument is pretty easy to figure out here. What's cool is to think about how they decided to support that argument. That the predictive text is giving us all of these horrible, oppressive ideas about women. Like, that's what would naturally come next after the words women should. And what they're saying is that we need to do something about that. That shouldn't be, those shouldn't be the first four options after to predict what comes next after the words women should. I think it's a pretty powerful poster. The next one is an anti-smoking ad from 2012, and we have, it's so cool, two cigarettes side by side, and the tops are lit and burning, and then we have no more killing, and then down underneath that it says it is estimated that one person dies every 8 seconds from smoking. Stop smoking now. So again, we don't really have to reach far to figure out what they're trying to persuade us of. They're trying to persuade us that people shouldn't smoke, that smoking kills. What's interesting, though, is how are they trying to convince us of this? I mean, we have some logos here. We have some logic, right? We have some statistics. It's estimated that one person dies every 8 seconds from smoking. No more killing. So that goes with the logic and then kind of starts to tap into pathos a little bit of emotion. But I think where this poster gets interesting is actually in the image of the cigarettes. You could say that they look like smokestacks, which would make sense. I know my first impression, the first thing I thought of when I saw those two cigarettes as they appear right there were the Twin Towers. And I don't know if that would have anything to do with a anti-smoking campaign other than they just know that it would make us feel, and even if it doesn't have anything to do with the argument they're presenting, it would catch our attention. But it's kind of a logical fallacy in visual form. It doesn't have anything to do with the argument that's being presented. It's just a way to tap into emotions. And I don't know, I'll be interested to see if you guys, if it made you think of the same thing, but I know that's what it made me think of. So it's an interesting one. But I also like this one because it is a good example of how some advertisements and posters do try to tap into some logic, even though the majority of what we respond to is emotion. All right, so we have another one after that. I hate this poster, it's so depressing. We have a man who is taken a gun to his own head, shot himself, and it's from the Meth Not Even Once campaign in Montana in 2006. And that was the name of their campaign, Meth Not Even Once. And all of the different images that they produced for that ad campaign had those words on, Meth Not Even Once. And so if you look at the image, obviously our eye is first drawn to the man, his face. He's in anguish, clearly. We see the gun. Right above the gun, we see the word meth. And then we don't see any other words on that side. Everything else is on the other side. So it's almost like the bullet coming out of the gun is meth. And what comes out the other side is all of those other things: paranoia, theft, disease, violence, lesions, ceaseless desperation. So on the literal level, using meth is like putting a gun to your head, that it will kill you. On a figurative level, it might not kill you right away, but it's still going to produce all of those things on the right-hand side of the image. So paranoia, theft, disease, violence, lesions, ceaseless desperation. It's a very cool play on the literal versus the figurative and the power of the bullet and the meth. What's also very cool is that you've got the letters for the words. Some letters are red and some letters are black. And if you look at all of the red letters, starting with the word meth over on the left side, and you go through the red letters spell out meth not even once. It's pretty cool. I think it's a very powerful image. And again, not a stretch to figure out what the argument is, but really cool how they're trying to support their argument in this one. A lot of them are pretty cool if you want to check those out on the internet. Oh my gosh, the next one. Oh, this one gets to me. So we have a public service announcement, this image from Innocence in Danger from 2013. So we have what appears to be a young girl There's nothing to suggest that it couldn't be a young boy, though. And we're seeing their backside, their rear end, and they've slipped their phone, their smartphone, into their back pocket. And instead of seeing the outline of the phone inside the pocket, the phone has turned into a hand. So as if, the phone turns into a hand that is touching this young person inappropriately. And in the bottom right-hand corner, it says sexual predators can hide in your child's smartphone. I mean, what is more effective in this example here? Reading the words in that bottom corner, sexual predators can hide in your child's smartphone, or seeing that image that totally preys on our emotions. Well, obviously the image is more effective. It's not a stretch to figure out what they're trying to get us to agree to or get us to see here. We need to be very diligent about, letting our kids use technology and being very aware of how vulnerable it makes them, and that if we're not too careful, it's basically like we're just letting the predators, we're just inviting them in practically. So the words, sexual predators can hide in your child's smartphone, I mean, that's logical, it makes sense, we understand, but when we see the image, that takes it to another level. And again, advertisers know, these campaign makers, they know that to get us, they have to tap into those emotions and those values. And this one sure does. And then our last image, which I think is so cool, is a McDonald's ad from 1977. So we have this family sitting around a table at McDonald's, eating, laughing, having a great time. And at the top it says, "Give our best to your family." And there's a bunch of text on the bottom that says, "You can count on nothing but the best from McDonald's restaurants. Pure 100% beef that's probably even leaner than the kind you serve at home. Perfect fries, piping hot pies, breakfast dishes that are really delicious, and the fish that never tastes fishy, just good. Those are but a few of the quality dishes we serve with pride at McDonald's, but what we're proudest to serve is you." So, on the surface, very easy to figure out what's going on here. They're showing a happy family and giving us some information about what kind of delicious foods they serve, and we should eat there. They take pride in serving us, and we should go there and eat their food. We will be a happy family just like the one pictured. However, I think there's some interesting things going on here. This is actually part of a series of McDonald's ads that featured African Americans in their in the photos, in the images. And I want you to just think about how they worded the text, thinking about who the audience was. If the audience is that culture, that part of our society, how did they try to appeal? 100% beef that's probably even leaner than the kind you serve at home, because we know the kind you serve at home probably isn't all that great. Really. Perfect fries, piping hot pies, breakfast dishes that are really delicious. It almost sounds like a rap, right? A little bit of soul, a little bit of R&B. And the fish that never tastes fishy, just good, because the fish you eat probably smells fishy, I guess. I don't know. I just think that there's some interesting assumptions made in the text of the ad based off of the visual. And you'll see another one, part of this week's homework, that touches on some of the same ideas. I guess we could say it touches on the same stereotypes. Maybe, I mean, I guess if you get right down to it, that's really what they're doing. Not in a very obvious way, but there's still some assumptions being made. Nowadays, we don't really have to worry about. I would say nowadays we don't have to worry about advertisers being this ridiculous. However, if you did the weekly discussion on the Dove ad, maybe I'm not quite so accurate in that. So anyway, that's all the images that I included in the PowerPoint. I wanted to just go through and let you see how, on the one hand, advertising is obvious, but on the other hand, there's still often things going on in the advertisement that we don't necessarily pick up on right away. But we absorb it. We see it, we feel it, we hear it. We just don't stop to think about it very often. And because of that, we just continue to absorb and continue to absorb until eventually they have pretty much informed us how to think and feel about certain things. It's that repetition. That's what happens. So you're going to be asked for one of the homework assignments this week to choose from some visuals and start looking at them with an analytical eye. So hopefully this helped, but just give it your best shot and try to, have fun with it and make it interesting. If you have any questions about this PowerPoint, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, you guys are free to move on to the next item in this week.